It's time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Maturepreneur podcast. I am your hostess with the mostest, Jeanette Anderson. Today, I happen to be coming to you from beautiful Orlando, Florida, although I got to tell you, it's rainy, overcast, and damn cold here. But I am happy to be here with Wanda Allen, who is calling in from, where are you, Wanda, in the world?
I'm in Oxford, Mississippi.
Oh, okay. I bet you it's colder there. Did you guys get a bunch of snow?
No, it doesn't snow that
Oh, okay.
often. Maybe once a year, maybe. We had some flurries the other morning, but nothing to speak of. I was raised in Denver. This is nothing.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, which is a lot like Denver.
Oh.
So yeah, I get you. All right. So today we are going to have some fascinating conversations around sales and follow up and follow through and why it's important. Wanda is the guru and queen of follow through. So it is really a lot about how this critical part of your sales process is handled, because it can be a struggle for a lot of people and occurs like a real to-do or something that you want to avoid or push aside. And yet our businesses rely exclusively on whether or not we can actually make a sale, because if you don't have a sales coming in, you have a very expensive hobby. So we're going to talk and get to the heart of the matter about how to overcome follow-up challenges so that you can get more clients and close more sales. So I'm very excited that you're here, and I'm going to introduce Wanda formally, and then we're going to get the juicy tidbits about the behind the scenes, whatever those may be. And then we're going to dive into some content about sales and sales follow-up and follow through, but also about Wanda's journey as a maturepreneur. So stick with us. This is going to go fast, be exciting, and I'm really happy you're listening today. So I'll tell you all about Wanda. So you just sit there and look pretty, Wanda. We'll just get to you in a moment. So the short version is I would like to introduce Wanda Allen with follow-up sales strategies. She's a speaker, coach, and corporate trainer, and is going to share more about her background during the presentation. But I really want you to hear, she knows her stuff. She's been at this for 25 years. Part of that is in senior management, etc., and has worked in sales for a long time. So this woman knows what she's talking about. So finally, hi, Wanda.
Hi there.
We're officially here together now. So now we've heard some of the official bit, and you've got your website and your bio and all that. But tell us something about you we wouldn't guess just by looking at you or reading your website, or that maybe even your friends don't know. What's something that we wouldn't guess about you?
Well, this is kind of on the personal side, but I am like my most favorite thing in the world to do is thrifting. And I'm a late bloomer. I just discovered thrifting like 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, I love it because I go in, it's a treasure hunt. And I'm a snobby thrifter. So it's got to be new or look new. And I'm like, where is the gemstone in here waiting for me? I love it. I'm so sorry, I'm a late bloomer. I am a mature thrifter.
Okay, and now is this, when you say thrifting, are you talking like finding jewelry or furniture or clothes or any of the above, or art? What are you, antiques? What are you thrifting for?
Everything you just said except for antiques.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So basically, you just like going into thrift stores, finding a great, awesome deal, and being excited by it.
Yes. Yes. And you would never know it. Like if you looked at some of the pieces in our house, you would die. You'd say, that was thrifted? No way.
Really?
How much? Yes, it's unbelievable.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
So fun. It is so fun.
That's great. That's great. Everybody needs a hobby, and you sounds like you found one of yours, your next one or your current one. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how come you got into sales. Like what was that journey, but also the deeper purpose behind that. What's your why? Why do you do what you do in the world? So let's start
Well,
with that. What's your purpose? Because we'll just dive in at the deep end here.
okay, so follow-up is just an area that in general people struggle with for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And as you said, well, sales is everything. Okay, because if you don't have sales, you don't have a business. Well, the number one way to bring in more sales is through follow-up. So I had a 25-year corporate career, and I developed a very strong skill set for creating systems. And when I went into sales, the reason I went into sales is because I was approached to see if I would take a position as a branch manager. I used to be a business banker, and I took it, and it put me into sales. And when I studied the sales process, I just thought follow-up is so crucial, but how do you do it? How do you stay on top of it? How do you get it done consistently? Well, I fell back on what I know how to do well, which is create systems. So I
Yeah.
developed systems for following up. And when I left the bank, when I left the industry after 25 years and became a speaker and coach, I just learned so quickly how much people struggle and they work so hard.
Mhm.
And the why I do this is because I don't want you to work as hard. I want you to you can work hard, but I want you to get fruits from that labor. And so many people don't get the fruits from the labor of lead generation.
Mhm.
And that, so that pains me. And that's why I'm on my mission to help everyone I can, because business is so much easier to get. There is so much waiting for you that
Mm.
you've already generated if you will just follow up. And
Mm.
so people know they need to do it, but how do you do it? And then that's the whole gamut of what I teach.
Okay. Well, okay. So I get that part of this is really about you want people to support people in being more effective in their business, and certainly sales follow up helps with that, and
Yeah.
to not have to work as hard. But why does that matter to you so much? What do you think the kind of the purpose throughout your life has been in terms of like why does that matter to you? Why do you care if we work hard?
Because I believe you don't have to work as hard, you're not as stressed out. It's the whole adage, work smarter, not harder. Okay, we all
Mhm.
know, but how do you do that? But I want people to enjoy being in business, and people are losing their joy. And it's
Mm.
because they're strapped so thin, they are so stressed out. They're going 100 miles an hour in 10 different directions, and there's this pressure of, well, I should be doing this because everyone's doing it, but I also should be doing that because everyone's doing it. And I'm just like, time out. Let's just get back to the basics
Mhm.
of lead generation, follow up, close more business.
Okay,
And
got it.
yeah, so it really makes me sad to see
Yeah.
people so, and if they would just pull it in, and that's what I'm such a systems help you pull it in, get control of it, get consistent, and then guess what? Start enjoying what you're doing.
Yes. Well, so let's talk about some of those practical tips and hints. So, what is one of the big mistakes that you see a lot of entrepreneurs making when it comes to sales? And I know you're going to say they don't have systems, but more specifically, or what do you think is the number one mistake people make when it comes to their sales?
They don't follow up. And here's why. You know why? The number one reason
Mm.
is fears. There's so much fear associated with following up. Fear of being pushy, fear of rejection, fear of not knowing what to say, fear of not knowing the outcome. And so because of those fears, people don't do it. And follow is very easy not to do. So
Mhm.
I think that people are generally good at lead generation, regardless of how you're doing it, networking, cold calling, door knocking, asking for referrals. People are in general do that pretty well,
Mhm.
but they fall short on the back end. So
Mhm.
here's what I want your audience to always remember, that lead generation does not bring in the business. It
Mhm.
plants the seed, and that's very important. But you want that seed to sprout to a yes or a no. Of course, you want the yes, but you come across no's. To get to the
Mhm.
yeses, you're going to hit no's.
Mhm.
If and how do you, so for any seed to sprout, you've got to nurture it, water it, take care of it. How do you do that? You do that through following up.
Mhm.
Because if you don't follow up, that seed goes dormant and it will die.
Right.
So that's to me the biggest mistake in sales that's made.
Okay. So I want to come back to the follow up and the process, but one of the things you said at the beginning was that it's fears. And a lot of things that I tell my clients is if they listen to the commonality of those fears, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want them to think I'm being aggressive. I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to be rejected. I ask them the commonality in all those phrases, and it's I. So when we get really scared is when we're over here in our ego. When we shift to a perspective of service, I wonder what they need. I wonder how I can help them. I wonder what's going on over there for them. Then we get out of our own ego stuff, and a lot of the fear goes away. So that's, I call it service-based selling, and just being really clear that it's really not about us, and just get over yourself is my 3-word answer to solution to sales fear. Stop making it about you, make it about them. So that's one of the tips I give my people. What is something you would say about that, about those fears, or how can they deal with them, or how do you advocate that people get past or through or around those fears?
Well, listen, we all have fears. To be not have fear would to not be human. And it just, you can't let the fear be the driving force because if it is, it's going to stop you in action. And so just reframing the fear, like you said, because I agree with that. When you come from a place of making the sale, it's about you. When you
Mhm.
come from a place of service, it's about the prospect. If oh, but they're going to think I'm being pushy. No, are you really though? You see, if a prospect has peaked, their interest has been piqued in by your product or service, it's
Mhm.
actually your job and your responsibility to follow up
Mhm.
because I know all of your listeners know they will make a difference in that prospect's life or business with the product or service they sell. So when interest has been piqued, to not follow up, of course, is doing a disservice to you, but it's doing a greater disservice to that prospect because
Mhm.
you're not giving them an opportunity to work with you.
Right.
And to think, well, if they're ready or when they're ready, they'll let me know. It would be great if it worked that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't. People forget.
Mhm.
Was her name Jeanette or
Yeah.
Janet or
Yeah. Yeah.
Jill? And I can't find her number. And so the next person that does what you do that they meet is gonna get the business.
Yeah. Well, and the reality is that people, like you said, don't remember. They get busy. Someone else comes along and they're front of mind right then and there. I just went through a timeshare pitch because we're staying at a resort here, and you have to go through that if you want this, package deal. And when I can wrap my brain around it, because I've gone through a few of them, I actually use it as a way to study sales and sales processes. One of the things they are very clear on is if they don't get some money from you before you walk out the door, they will never see you again, no matter how much you say, I'll come back or I'll be back tomorrow or whatever. And
Yeah.
that's just the reality is if we don't um, close the sale within the window that we have access to the client, then we won't close the sale. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be right this second, but the odds of, them being out of sight and out of mind and actually buying are not very good. So we do really have to be of service to close them now, or or now being within a frame of reference where it's not hooky and manipulative and they're making a solid, clear yes or no decision. But if you go, well, when they're ready, they'll call me. That isn't going to happen, like you said.
It's not going to happen. And so when you're in that window of when the sale really should be made, it's being very good at asking next step questions. That's
Mm-hmm.
crucial
Okay.
because that keeps everyone on the same page. Everyone knows what the next step is, and it makes it easier for the salesperson to do what they need to do at the time they need to do it.
Okay. So let's talk about those next step questions. So let's say you've gone through a discovery call, or you've gone through some kind of assessment process, or you've done some analysis around what their needs are, or they've just walked into your store. And so, it comes down to it's time to make the sale. What do you usually advocate for people in terms of just some questions to move to that part of the process? So to start the sale, what do you suggest?
So once you've given the information, answered their questions, you kind of get a feel for where they're when they're saying, oh, okay, all right. You can tell that the information part is winding down. And
Mm-hmm.
then you just ask, is this something you'd be interested in? Are you ready to move forward today? Would you like to get started? And then if they're not ready, they'll tell you, I
Mm-hmm.
actually need to talk to my manager, spouse, think about it, go over budget, whatever it is. And then you just say, okay, would it be okay if I followed up?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. When would be a good time? Just asking if you can follow up is not good.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, there's a lot of people that go into the philosophy, oh, I'll follow up with you next Tuesday. And I would rather say, when would be a good time? Because for all I know, they're going to be out of town next Tuesday or in an all-day board meeting next
Right.
Tuesday. I don't know. So that's my approach. And what I teach is when would be a good time. So you're getting their permission and it's when it's a good time for them. And that's why it makes it easier for the salesperson to follow up when they've been asked.
Right.
Oh, and that allows you to keep the ball in your court, and that's really important.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Because you don't want to be waiting by the phone. And so you've asked some of those kind of closing questions, and you mentioned them saying, I need to think about it. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's a common objection that often can put people off. So when that comes up, salespeople or people who are trying to sell their products or services, when that comes up, what do you usually reply to that?
Is there anything that would prevent you from moving forward?
Okay.
Because see, Brian, I think it was Brian Tracy that said when a prospect tells you they need to think about it, it's just another way of them telling you no.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's always true, but I think with that question, is there anything that would prevent you from moving forward? That's going to help you weed out the ones that, yeah, they really just aren't interested versus, yeah, if I can't fit it in the budget or my boss isn't in agreement with it or my spouse or whatever it is, then, there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it also gives so that's a potential objection, right? If
Mm-hmm.
there's any reason anything that would prevent them from moving forward, it gives you an opportunity to address their objection right there if possible. And
Mm-hmm.
if not, you can say, I'll get back to you on that. Um, and then if they say, well, I need to think. So once you address that, if you can do it in the moment, then you say, so would you like to move forward? Are you ready to get started? Is this something, are you in a position to make a decision today? Ask it. It shows that you have initiative. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's professional. Don't be afraid of it. People get nervous. Oh, I don't know. Don't get nervous. You're always remind yourself why you're there to serve so
Mm-hmm.
that they can experience your product or service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And they can't if they don't buy. So absolutely, I couldn't agree more. If someone says, let me think about it, a lot of the time it is a no. And so the social style of people who actually mean they want to think about it are the analytical types. The analyzers do want time to process and think about it and crunch the numbers and figure out this and that and so forth. But that's a fairly small percentage of the market, and you just need to clarify what is it they need to think about. Do you have the information you need to be able to make an assessment? What's stopping you from deciding now, like what's missing for you, like you said. And then if they can't articulate that, it's a no. And often what I'll say to people is, you know what, a clear no is fine with me if it's not a fit, but I want it to be a free no, not and a free yes. An empowered no or an empowered yes, not just one coming from fear or scarcity. So let's just really talk this through. Because no is fine. When you give people permission to say no, you give them permission to say yes. So tell me a little bit about your process in terms of how you keep track of what's next. So let's talk about some of those what's next steps and questions.
I
when
didn't understand.
when you're clarifying the what's next step. So they've indicated that they're interested, or they've said, I don't know, I need to think about it, or they're not ready yet. What is your process around following up and determining next steps with them? Oops, I think you froze. Are you with me, Wanda? You there? Okay, so what are those next step questions?
So, are you ready to move forward? Is this something you're interested in? Are you in a position to make a decision today? Would it be okay if I followed up? When would be a good time? Those are the primary questions. Those several questions get to the heart of the matter.
Okay.
It gets right to the point.
Okay, so let's do both scenarios. Let's say I say, yes, I'm ready to move forward. What do you do then?
For me, I would say, okay, well, let's go ahead and process your payment, and then we will set up a time for our first session, using me. Or let's say it's a realtor that say, yes, we're going to move forward. Okay, great. We'll get the paperwork to you tomorrow to sign. Are you available? I'll come back. So you make that appointment right then and there, get their credit card right then and there. You got to grab them while it's good. So
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's how I would handle that.
Okay, great. So get payment, make sure that you've booked whatever the next obligation or step is. So a coaching appointment. This is really important, by the way. I have missed this and sent this to people in an onboarding message where I'll say, go here and book your appointments. And they often don't, or they don't book them right, or they don't book enough, or they don't book them too far out. Really important to book that first next step right then when they give you the credit card, because it's also immediate win. They give you money and they get an immediate win. Oh, I'm booked. Now I've got a call. I've got a thing. There's a payoff. Okay. And if they say, no, I'm not ready, what do you say? Let's assume we've gone through all the objection handling. And they say, nope, I'm not ready yet. Then what would you say?
Then I would say, okay, would it be okay if I followed up? And most likely, they'll say yes. When would be a good time? And then I'll make note of when a good time is. Then I go into how I make sure I don't forget to follow up on that day.
Okay. Okay. And so do you ask them any questions about, is this really a no? Is there anything that you say about that? Or do you just assume that if they say, I want you to follow up with me, that they do?
Yeah, because if when you say, are you ready in a position to make a decision today? If they say no, like 99% of the time, they're going to tell you why.
Right.
And that's when I will come in. Okay, would it be okay if I followed up?
Great.
Because again, I don't want them getting back to me. I want to follow up with them.
Perfect. And so
Yeah.
how do you track that? So what systems do you use? How do you put it in your calendar? How does that work on the kind of the back end part for you?
So a CRM.
Okay.
It's a must have. You must have a CRM. If you don't use a CRM, the process is so much more difficult.
Yeah.
So CRM is everything. It's like the mothership to it all. So I would go into my CRM, document in the notes section what the conversation was, and then because I don't want to try to remember that. That hurts my brain too bad.
Yes. Yes.
And then I set up a task reminder date for the follow-up date. And
Okay.
that's it.
And what CRM do you use?
It's a funny name. It's called Less Annoying.
Less Annoying CRM. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant name, actually. Okay, I use Go High Level. I haven't got the sales tracking process set up yet. How challenging was that for you in your CRM? Because it's not just a map. Like you have to enter your contact information with your notes, like you said, and put more notes rather than less because you won't remember. And especially if you're busy doing what you're supposed to be doing in prospecting, you might talk to hundreds of people in a year, or dozens. And I don't know about you, but I cannot remember that shit. So make sure you make lots of good notes, not just vague things. I literally have something in my calendar that I looked at today and went, I have no clue what I'm supposed to do with that. Like what that means, who that is, what the action is. So be very clear. And so when you set that up, what do you do in terms of you tag them and then you set up a time for it to remind you to call them or email them or what?
Yeah, like if they say follow up with me in 2 weeks, I would set a reminder date for 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
And then I would follow up with them.
And so it pops up in your email to call them or email them, whichever one is what you agreed on.
Yes, yeah. So I do get emailed my tasks for the day, and then if I pull up my CRM, or when I pull it up, because I pull it up every day, it's my to-do list
Yeah.
is there as well. So you're covered. That's the beauty of automation
Yeah.
and having a CRM. It
Okay.
literally is impossible to forget if you
Yeah.
do your part.
Yeah. Now, what if someone's doesn't have a CRM or isn't at that stage yet? What did you do when you were old school before that? Did you ever not have a CRM?
Well, back in the day, we're old enough here. Do you
Yeah.
remember the tickler system? Tickler systems?
Yeah. Oh, in terms of like an actual file. Yeah.
Yeah,
File box.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. 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 I do remember that. I am old enough for that. So what we're
Yeah.
talking about, for those of you who don't, is literally you had a card box with index cards in, and you would write the contact's information, and you had months, and then you would take it and you would move it forward to the month that you need to call them back, or the week, and you'd pull out those cards and you'd phone them. It's actually not a bad system, really. If you want something old school and simple, that one works. Okay. And
The only
so,
the only danger though is if you ever lose that note box.
yes, you're screwed.
Everything everything goes by. But
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
but I've used a CRM for years. I can't imagine doing business without a CRM. It's too chaotic.
yeah, yeah,
Because you know what people use when they don't use a CRM? They use pen and paper,
yeah,
sticky notes, their phone, their email, Excel, their memory bank, and usually use a little bit of all of it. And it's
yeah.
the chaos ensues.
And maybe two or three spreadsheets everywhere, and you can't remember which one's which. And yeah, I might actually resemble that remark. So been there, done that. So tell us a little bit about follow up, that process. So when it's now 2 weeks later, and you're calling, what's your approach around that?
Just, say we spoke a couple of weeks ago and you were interested in moving forward, but you wanted to go over your budget and ask that I follow up at this time.
Okay. And
And
so when they
here's the thing.
say, no, I didn't do it, then
Mhm.
what do you say or do?
Well, I know how busy you are. You want to be supportive. Would it be okay if I followed it up at another time?
Yeah.
Yeah, give me another week. I should have it done in a week. Great, I will do that. Go into the notes section, document what was said, and set a task date for a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. And sometimes you also, don't you think there are times where you got to be honest with people and say, are you really going to do this, or is this just a way to kind of not have to deal with me? Is there a point at which you call them on it?
No.
No?
Because if
Okay.
they're communicating with me and giving me specific reasons, gosh,
Okay.
I didn't have a chance to get to it. You can get a sense for it, or and no, I take them at face value.
Okay.
Um, yeah, because here's the thing, I don't want to get in my head
Yeah.
because that can be problematic
Yeah.
and maybe create a situation that's not
Doesn't
real.
exist. Yeah, exactly. Having the
Yeah.
relationship all in your head instead of with the person.
Yes, yeah.
Great advice. Great advice. Okay. And so what because I know a lot of people think, okay, well, I called and I emailed and I called again. That's I don't want to bug them. Um, I heard a stat recently on the cruise that I was just on, the marketers cruise, that now it used to be that you had to follow up 7 times before someone would follow through. But now it's between 17 and 32 touch points. So it could be that they see a post from you on Facebook, or they, like, it's different touch points. It's not just all direct follow up, but still, I was really shocked by that. I thought that was a lot. What do you generally suggest in terms of how much follow up to do?
Well, the statistics that I've seen for years, and I believe they're very accurate, is that 80% of sales are made between the fifth and 12th contact.
Okay.
So, like, don't even think about stopping until you've hit number 5. Don't even think about it because it's part of sales. Prospects ignore, they don't respond, and then they do respond and they're not ready yet, and then they ignore you the next time. I mean, it's just a process. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I say don't even think about it before 5,
Okay, so say that again. 80% of sales.
or maybe between the 5th and 12th contact.
Okay.
And yeah, and
I
this
really hope you guys are listening to that and hearing that and really take it on board, because that's where I would say probably 90% of people fall down is not enough follow up.
you know what? You hit the nail on the head, because the research goes on to say that 90% of people follow up twice and then quit.
Mm.
Okay, so only 10% of people make 3 or more contacts. Well, if you can commit and be willing and able to go the distance, there's so much more opportunity for you, because people don't do it. And
Yeah.
you, it's so easy to stand out, and you leave great. And so here's the deal. Let's say I'm the prospect and I'm talking to 2 salespeople because I'm shopping around.
Mm-hmm.
One salesperson follows up with me twice. I never hear from again. The
Mm-hmm.
other one is consistently following up with me. Who
Mm-hmm.
am I more impressed with? Who's going to leave a greater impression, and who's going to get my business? The answer is
Yeah.
obvious. So I've ignored that person a couple times, but they're still coming around,
Yeah.
you know. And that's when I say it's your job. It is that both of their jobs, but the one is in the 90 percentile that tries twice and quits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you say like 5 and 12 contact, are you talking actually connecting, or are you talking like maybe sometime I leave a voicemail, I don't get them, or I drop them an email, but I don't get a response? Are you talking about like connections, or are you talking about contact, like actually where we connect? What do you mean by
Actually, following up, you following up, it takes between
that?
5 and 12 times for you to follow up for that piece of business, for that meeting, for their decision. Yes.
So it may not be 5 or 12 conversations, but it's 5 or 12 times that I reach out to them and try and connect.
Yeah, and you may be having conversation in
Yeah.
those 5, and they're not ready yet. And so that's why I say, just keep these statistics in mind, because it's just part of sales. Prospects don't operate on our timeline.
Yeah.
We get frustrated, or, oh my gosh, they're putting me off again, or they ignored me, or, so it's just part of it. It would be great if prospects responded every single time. But
Yeah.
here's the
Right
thing.
away. Yeah.
You don't have control if over their response, if they're going to return your email or text, if they're going to listen to the voicemail. You have no control over that. The only thing you have control over is your action. So
Mm-hmm.
just take the action you need to take,
Mm-hmm.
and let the chips fall where they may, and stay in the game and do your job. And I don't mean that to come across as rude, but just
No.
focus. That's your job.
Cool. I love it. And so is there any last, before we switch tracks to kind of finding out a little bit more about your journey kind of in growing your business, what's one last piece of advice you would give people to either how to think about sales, or something that they may not be doing that they could do? What's one last piece of advice around sales you'd like to leave people with?
Well, I think people who are struggling feel like, I'm just not a salesperson. I'm just not wired this way. Or salespeople are born, they're not made. And you, with the right habits and right commitment, I think anybody can do well. And knowledge of what you're selling,
Mm-hmm.
anybody can do well. There are definitely natural born salespeople. There's no doubt. Okay. And I've worked with many of them. They're very effective,
Mm-hmm.
very effective, but oftentimes they're not very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, balls are dropping, and there's fires, and they're stressed out, and there's
Yeah.
always 911. But if you can become efficient and effective,
Yeah.
that's the sweet spot. So
Good.
we all lean more one way or the other, but I think if you really commit yourself and say, no, I can do this, because money there's no cap,
Mm-hmm.
and freedom, you have to work, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but you're
Yeah.
not sitting in a cubicle
Yeah.
8 hours a day. So
Yeah.
if you really love the product or service you sell, just be willing to take
Sure.
consistent action, don't quit. And yeah, I think you can do it.
Awesome. And so you've been doing sales a long time, but tell us like how you came to start your own business because you were in corporate for a long time. Why did you make that transition?
So I was a business banker and I was a senior vice president. And the bank I was working for was acquired. And it was the first merger I'd ever experienced in 25 years, which is
Mhm.
unheard of to be in banking that long
Mhm.
and never experienced that. So this was in 2009. And if you remember where the economy was, it was on its head
Mhm.
and banking was in the middle of the firestorm. And I just knew banking had run its course in my life. And because we were not the lead bank and I was part of senior management, you know how that story ends. I knew I was going to be on the chopping block. And I just thought, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to do something different. But I
Mhm.
didn't know what that something different was. And a friend of mine said, you should become a speaker and a coach and teach people how you follow up. And I thought, oh, that's crazy. I don't know anything about speaking and coaching. And I didn't think I was doing anything out of the ordinary. But
Mhm.
I really admired Dina. And I thought, well, she sees something here. I'll give it a whirl. And I started speaking and I learned very quickly that in general people struggle. So I said, there's
Mhm.
something here. And then the lead bank called me 30 days to the day to see if I'd come back.
Mm.
And the economy was terrible. And they'd give me my pay back, my rank back, my vacation back, everything,
Oh,
all. And I declined it. And
wow.
my dad, my husband were like, what? But when I know it was the craziest, riskiest thing to ever do, but I couldn't explain it to anybody to make sense. But yeah, it was.
What was that feeling for you? What in that 30 days, what shifted in you that made you go, yeah, no.
Well, I knew because I was part of senior management, I was privy to the fact that we were for sale. And it took 9 months for the sale to be made. I had 9 months. I would observe my feelings, I would observe what was going on, the industry. I'd been a manager for so many years. This is something I want to keep doing. So by the time the day got there, I was done. I had made up
Mm.
my mind. I had made up my mind. I'm doing this. And then when they called me to see if I'd come back,
The
it
universe's way of saying, you sure? You're really, really sure? Okay. And so, what was your journey transitioning from being a full time employee? Because many, many, many people now, especially maturepreneurs, those of us who are 55 plus, are transitioning out of corporate, transitioning out of jobs they've been in their whole lives or roles they've been in their whole lives. Who am I now that I'm not a mom? Who am I now that I'm not the CEO? How did you make that mindset shift? Because it is quite a different mindset. Did you find it a big difference in terms of mindset between being an employee and an entrepreneur?
oh, it was huge, huge. It required a lot of coaching. I needed a lot of help. I called myself, I was a diligent corporate soldier for 25 years, started at 19 and left
Okay.
when I was 45. So yes, I mean, I'm not kidding you. I hired a number of coaches because I was a fish out of water and I didn't want to try to figure it out on my own. I mean, even down to dressing, because if I didn't have a blazer and nylons on, I felt naked.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
sent from that all the way to entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
sales and it's just a completely different ball game. So that what really helped me was getting mentors, and those were the coaches. They fast tracked me, and I still believe me, it was still clunky. But that's part of, I think anybody's going to experience that. But
Do you
it was,
remember what some of the things were that you really had to shift? So one of the things you said was image and how you
yeah,
kind of presented yourself. What were some of the other things that were kind of a major shift for you?
yeah. Feeling like, because my husband was an entrepreneur for 35 years, feeling if I wasn't at my desk at 8 o'clock and there until 6 o'clock at 6:30, I felt like I was just being a total goof off. I mean, I had to relax, and take the grip off the wheel, if you will. It was
Mm-hmm.
just, so that was really a big transition for me too.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
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 freedom sounds good, but freedom can also be kind of challenging.
it is.
Structure, there's some freedom in structure. So it doesn't mean that you go all arbitrary, but you don't necessarily have to have the same kind of structure as you did when you were. And how about selling yourself versus being an employee?
Yes, that was quite a hurdle as well. Because this whole idea, I'm speaking and I'm selling me. I mean, I'm selling my systems, but it's me. It was so vastly different. And it took a lot of inner work too, because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, am I worthy of this? Am I the imposter thing? Do I really know what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
Should I be out here? But I'll tell you, writing my first book helped build my confidence, because, I just stood a little taller. Not that you need a book,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, that was really helpful. And
Mm-hmm.
then it was a small book, it was 100 page. It was no big deal, but it was something. It was,
Yeah.
and then I had hired another coach. She's like, you need to do a meteor book. And so I wrote my second book. But yeah, just following people that I admired and getting a lot of input and advice, suggestions, coaching, and all of that.
Cool. And so, yeah, I that first book kind of confirmed and codified that you knew what you were talking about. See, look, I wrote 100 pages. I must know what I'm talking about. And then, of course, the second book reconfirmed that as well. But it also helps with credibility,
Yeah,
both in your own mind and other people's minds. What
yeah.
do you think was the biggest breakthrough for you in your business that kind of took it to a level of where you thought, okay, I can do this?
Yeah. When the first year that I got booked 60 times.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
a lot of speaking.
it is. And I have spoken on average 60 times a year over the last 2020 year of COVID, I spoke 48 times. So
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And that first year that I did that really elevated me. I'm like, okay, I do know what I'm doing. I am an expert in this area in it, and I do deserve to be doing what I'm doing. And
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. So
And,
that
and,
was a breakthrough.
and so both in terms of telling them how to find you, but also in by way of saying sharing what your business model is. So you speak that much, and then what? So what do you drive them to? How do you turn those audiences into clients?
So I speak, and then I have a 1 hour free virtual workshop that I teach every week. So it gets them from there, from hearing me speak into the free workshop. And then from that free workshop, I offer my formal coaching program. And
Mm-hmm.
what's really important to me is they get value in
Mm-hmm.
each, because I don't know if you ever sat in on a webinar and you're like, okay, that was a total waste of time. Have you ever done that?
More times than I care to count. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, all they did was sell, and I'm just so sensitive to that.
Yeah.
So I make sure they get value in each,
Mm-hmm.
but that's my sales funnel. And then I
Okay.
have private, that's for my group coaching. And then I have private coaching. And so
Okay.
that usually feeds off the group.
So
But yeah,
speaking into the webinar into a one-to-one call, or webinar into you sell your group coaching from the webinar?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one or the other. So they go into a one-to-one call if they want. No, they
No.
just go
So,
into group.
yep. Yep.
Okay.
From the webinar at the end, for
Okay.
those that want more, then I offer my group coaching.
Okay. Awesome. So tell people where they can find out more about you, what your book is, and how they register for that webinar.
My website is a one-stop shop. It's
Okay.
followupsalesstrategies.com.
Followupsalesstrategies.com. Of course, we'll have it in the show notes. And you can go there and find the information about the webinar, which is called, what's the webinar called? What are they looking for?
There's a workshop. Just go to the workshops page.
Okay, a workshop page. And then also the information about your books are on there. So, what are your books' titles?
Well, my first book was Follow Up Savvy, and I tried to retire it. Don't buy it because I'm just so vastly different today. It just,
Okay.
but Follow Up Sales Strategies is on Amazon, and then
Okay.
it's also on my website.
Okay, great. And of course your contact information is going to be on there as well, right?
Yep.
And by all sounds of it, you're going to be seeing her somewhere close to you soon, anyways, in some audience, because girlfriend gets around. That's a lot of speaking. What percentage of that is virtual versus in person?
Oh my goodness. Before COVID, it was all in person. Since COVID, I've spoken like 4 times in person. Since,
Wow. Okay, so
yes,
that's almost
that's
100%
it's
virtual.
almost, yeah. And now,
Okay.
of course, as you know, it expands. I mean, I've spoken in England and Ireland and Canada, it's all, and then all over the country. So yeah,
Yeah.
isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And so and is most of that you booking into podcasts, summits, events, that kind of thing?
No, I do a lot of cold calling on
Okay.
groups and then referrals, or people who hear me speak or on a podcast. But I don't do summits. I do quite a few podcasts.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I don't do summits, but yeah, so it's podcasts and speaking to
And
groups, business organizations, networking groups.
right. And just to talk, I know we got to wrap up, but this is, I want people to be hearing kind of the really practical things of what actually works to get you booked, to get you on, because there's nothing to follow up on if you don't get those initial contacts. So when you say you cold call, what does that mean, and what's your process around that? Just like the big picture process of it.
So I call on groups. I look for networking groups, and they're almost always have the organizer's name,
Hmm.
contact information,
Hmm.
and I email them my title, outline, and bio, and then
Hmm.
I follow up, and then I start the follow-up process from
Okay.
there. And so I will, go to trade associations and networking groups are my primary because trade
Okay.
associations have monthly meetings, they have annual conferences, so that's really good sector for me.
Hmm.
And then I love networking groups.
Hmm. And
Also,
so do you find most of those through like Meetup and Eventbrite, that kind of thing, or do you mostly do searching for them?
I search a lot, and I ask for a referral. Hey, do you the people that I stay in touch with, it's what I call my gold mine, and everyone here has a gold mine. But do you know of any groups that bring in outside speakers? I just ask.
Okay, cool. To get
Fringe.
referrals and pass on. I love
Yes.
it. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Wanda. So, what's one last tip that you have for people to leave them with when it comes to being a follow up and follow through wizard?
Just commit that I'm going to get my follow-up work done every working day. If you do that every working day from now until December 31st, if I came back to you, you tell me your sales are through the roof. Guaranteed.
Awesome. So, I shouldn't do a follow up question on your last thing, but I'm curious, how many follow up calls do you make a day? And is almost all of your follow up phone, or do you also do a lot of email and so forth? What percentage is reaching out on the phone?
Well, I always use the phone first because
Okay.
it's the most efficient tool we have, and it's the one that's used the least. There's so much fear around the phone,
Yeah.
and then I use email or text as secondary. But most people follow up email or text or social media direct message. But what they're doing is hiding behind those.
I'm glad we got this last point in because that's a really important one. Okay. And so, how many calls a day do you make on average?
It just depends what's on my to-do list generated by my CRM.
Right.
But here's the thing is you should have follow-up work to do every working day. If you don't, your pipeline's too thin. Like if I pulled up my CRM and there was no follow-up task there, I'd be going, oh, that's not good.
Okay.
Okay. So you really should have that work to do every working day. And if not,
Awesome.
just go generate leads.
Okay, I love it. And just go do that. Okay, so get in touch with Wanda. She's got some great resources for you. That webinar sounds fascinating. I'm going to register myself. Is that an evergreen webinar? No, you said live weekly, right? Okay, great. So going to register myself, and frankly, this is a kick in the context for me as well because I am guilty, as most people are. I probably did, I have no idea, maybe 150 discovery calls last year, where you're working with people to help them clarify where they're at, what they need, follow on from networking, etc., and have not followed up on most of those effectively. And I guarantee most of those would actually, or many of those would become clients. So this year is my year for follow up and follow through. So that's why I was excited to hear you. And that's what I'm working on right now after the cruise, is really following up with those contacts and really making sure I get people in the calendar. So thank you for this reminder. It is something that people resist, and it's actually really easy when you connect with people. They really do like hearing from you. So, get over yourself, get on the phone. I will get over myself. I will get on the phone, and let's get those sales rolling for 2025. Thank you so much for being here, Wanda. And folks, go have a very bodacious week. Be bold, pick up the phone, call the damn people, make the damn sales. All right. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.